dip this thing in and then...
Yep. Well, did you actually get any water?
I don't know.
You have to cover it with your thumb before you...
Do you do what? What do I cover?
It's just like a straw.
I don't... This is not just like a straw.
It's exactly like a straw.
It's not.
Except the straw works better.
Oh.
There you go.
This is so... Joe... I mean, if you want a cool conversation piece, but the functionality of your little fancy dropper here is a little bit lacking.
Okay, yeah.
It's super pretty, though. I'll give you that.
It looks really cool. Welcome to Whiskey Uncut. I'm your host, Paul, joined today by the man whose muscles are full of bourbon.
That's probably accurate, yeah.
James.
Yeah. It's been a few days, though.
Topic today that we're going to look at is whiskey with water, adding water to whiskey.
And this comes because my good friend Harrison sent me a text one day, and because he was getting in touch with us because we had the episode about ice. Mm-hmm. He was asking a few questions about ice, and he was like, "Hey, what do you recommend for water?" And I was like, "Hey, that's a pretty good podcast topic." And there's a science to this. So I'm not a chemist. I'm not super nerdy about it.
But he is a doctor.
But I am a doctor. And so I read up on this a while ago because we wrote an article for Bourbon Sippers at some point about it. And essentially what it comes down to is that obviously, a whiskey is a mixture of water and ethanol, but they don't mix evenly. They play along well enough that they don't separate like oil and water, but that doesn't mean that they're homogeneous throughout the bottle. So ethanol will be in packets, water will be in packets. They tend to more equally distribute as you bring down the proof. And as you bring down the proof and you approach about 90, more of the ethanol comes up to the surface. And when it comes up to the surface, it drags up a lot of flavor molecules, particularly things like vanillins, other compounds that add spicy or smoky qualities to it. So if it's at 90 proof or below that, it already has that inherent in it, right? So when you pour it, it's already where it needs to be to get maximum flavor, maximum aroma out. However, if it's above that number, adding a few drops of water can bring the ethanol up in your glass, which brings those flavors with it and can extract some additional qualities. So my understanding is that a lot of the flavor molecules bind more readily to ethanol. Mm-hmm. And so as you add water, they tend to bind to the ethanol and then pull up to the surface.
And so that's what releases them.
Right. And so you will dilute the flavors when you get to a certain point, but I think, I'm all about 3-4 drops, just enough to kind of release it. You'll see some oiliness come out. Right. And that's the whole idea behind adding water to your whiskey.
And that's why I have this fancy little dropper so that you can add just 3 or 4 drops.
Here's my fancy dropper for those of you who can see. Well, you can see the approach different between Paul and myself.
James has this little peasant's rubber eyeglass stopper, with a plastic, and mine is handcrafted from crystal. Which I thought I was going to be able to say that with a straight face, but there's just no way.
But I mean, seriously, how nerdy do you have to be all just to have a dropper?
I know.
That you use just for whiskey, right?
Yeah.
But then you take it up to a whole nother level with this thing that looks like some sort of weird crack pipe that you got for, where is this from?
It does kind of look like a weird crack pipe.
Like Paul has a crack pipe that he uses to put water into.
It's the official Glencairn whiskey dropper and little, what do you call this? Like a
pitcher.
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell that is. It's apparently a crack pipe pitcher.
And it comes with like this awesome little stave with a Scottish.
So my dropper probably costs like 25 cents, and it works perfectly. It does exactly what I wanted to do. But I will say this, regardless of how crazy you want to get with your dropper, if you want to use a little cheapo one like mine, or you want to use something super fancy and nerdy like Paul's, you need to have a dropper if you're going to be adding water to your whiskey.
Or a tiny spoon. You can use a small spoon.
You can, but it's so difficult to control.
It is.
And your ability to replicate from pour to pour is not going to be there.
That's true.
So what is this one?
So this is Aberlour Abundah. cask strength, batch 61, 60.8%.
And is this a sherry?
It is sherry cask only.
So this is going to be interesting because this one is sherry cask, right?
Well, I think we can just do one since we've established that the different
It doesn't
waters
matter.
don't seem to matter.
Okay. So this is going to be interesting because this one is not peaty, correct?
No, it's not peated. It's from Speyside. It's right down the street from McAllen and Balvenie and Glenfiddich. I actually went to Aberlour when I was in Scotland, and they have their visitor center. They're still like one of the small distilleries. Their visitor center is big enough to fit about 10 people inside. And it's basically just like a dude behind a counter, and he sells like it's like a gift shop. That's like the extent of their visitor center.
That's actually pretty cool, though. I like that.
It is cool. But then it's like you drive across the street and you're at McAllen, and they have like a 600,000 square foot Disney World. Yeah.
Yeah.
With they have like a Michelin star chef that works at their bistro. Like it's pretty.
That's
pretty
how it is. Like when you go to like, something like Buffalo Trace versus Willet, that's sort of the same thing. So the reason I'm curious about this is because if you take some time and you look up, should I add water to my whiskey? Most of the articles you read are going to be talking about Scotch because the research that's been done has centered around the compounds in whiskey they create that come out with the peatiness and the smokiness. Mm-hmm. And so even if you have a lightly peated whiskey, according to research, if you add a few drops of water to it, it brings out more of that aroma. It brings out more of the smokiness. I haven't seen anything with sherry.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see. And you picked a peaty one for the second one.
Yep.
And I already dislike peat. So if
but
I add more
it's
water,
Lagavulin,
but if I add more water, is it going to be even worse?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I disagree with I think water and peated whiskey breaks down the funk, but I don't think I think it makes it easier. Oh, I don't think it makes it smokier. We will see.
Are we going? And we should add Fiji to these because that's your jam, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like your Fiji.
So, what do you think of the Aberlour neat? First of all,
it smells beautiful.
It does. It smells really good.
It's got that very classic, like candied sherry note to it. There's a little bit of nuttiness for Andrew out there when he's listening. A very, very distinct, like almost like peanut shell or peanut like husk kind of smell to it.
Yeah, this one to me, I don't get as much of the sherry cask on the aroma. Like this to me, I picked this one because it has a little bit of a muted aroma, but the flavor is there.
Damn, that's really good. Jeez.
Aberlour Abundah is considered like the go-to cask strength sherry cask whiskey. It's so
really
good.
Tasty. And you're looking at a little over 121 proof.
Yep.
Which for a Scotch is
and it's about $100 a bottle.
Yeah, I would pay $100 for this a couple times over.
Yep.
Are these? So this is.
They're pretty readily available.
It's non-chill filtered.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. No,
do they add color or anything? Do you know? I think it's pretty red, but
yeah, I do think they probably add artificial coloring just because I've seen a few different bottles of it and they looked pretty much the same shade. So I think Aberlour does add coloring. I haven't seen them state that they don't, but someone could correct me if I'm wrong.
Wow, that's really rich. It's sweet.
Oh yeah, it's good.
The sherry adds a nice dryness at the end.
It's always it's lacked a little on the aroma to me compared to some other whiskeys, but the flavor the palate is like spot on.
I mean, to me, I'm not used to smelling sherry on whiskeys as much as you, so to me, the aroma is really heavy and fruity. But it's kind of maybe a little bit one-dimensional in the sherry aspect. Yep. Like I don't get a whole lot else coming through.
All right, I want you to use my little crystal dropper.
Oh, man.
It works. It works.
So I just dip this thing in and then...
Yep. Well, did you actually get any water?
I don't know.
You have to cover it with your thumb before you...
Do you do what? What do I cover?
It's just like a straw.
I don't... This is not just like a straw.
It's exactly like a straw.
It's not.
Except the straw works better.
Oh,
there you go.
This is so... Joe... If you want a cool conversation piece, but the functionality of your little fancy dropper here is a little bit lacking.
Okay, yeah.
It's super pretty though. I'll give you that.
It looks really cool.
It does. Oh man.
Yeah, now that really opens up the aroma.
Yeah, that's entirely different. Like, so One of my favorite things on the intro is you hear me say, like, you can smell that 5 feet from the glass, because that was the
Octomore.
Yeah, which is just this like the whole room fills with Octomore. Adding water to this, it's not as bad, but man, you don't have to get very close to the glass to get that just like pouring out of the glass.
Yeah. So to me, the water makes a huge difference on this in terms of the aroma. It really opens up. You get more of the dryness from the oak coming through. You get more of the nuttiness from the sherry.
Yeah, it's really intense.
You get more red fruits like strawberries, stuff like that popping out, like light red fruit.
Yeah, and it's brighter. I think if I was going to describe the nose, it's brighter. It's a little bit funkier and more musty just by itself. And again, I think that's from the sherry cask. But then you add a little bit of water to it and it livens it up quite a bit. Mm-hmm. This is noticeably better on the nose with a few drops of water.
And I think that with the proof, I don't think it changes the palate that much.
It's very similar. I think maybe it's a tad sweeter, but it's
a little bit brighter.
Up too. It's a little bit brighter. Making it up.
I don't get quite as much of like the thick sherry flavor. Like it diminishes maybe the syrupiness of it a little bit.
Yeah, it thins it out a bit.
But honestly, I think it makes up for it in the aroma.
Yeah, that's a really damn good whiskey. I like that.
You should go buy some.
I might. If I see this, honestly, I will. This is a good example, I think, of a Scotch that bourbon drinkers could do. It's, if you like sweeter profile stuff, I think this fits the bill. And the aroma is just so inviting and so vibrant that I think anybody would enjoy this.